The Chusky Boys!
This is Chad with Hemlock. What does a Chusky boy looks like?
Chusky Boys, what's that?
Chusky Boys, not to be confused with Husky Boys.
The Chusky Boys.
I believe y'all guys are listening to the Chusky Boys.
This is William Duvall, and you are listening to the Chusky Boys.
All right, Chusky listeners, we are at episode 22, and we got a fantastic interview as always, Dusty. You keep bringing the guests, and we appreciate it enough, man. Like I said earlier, it's either they're going to say yes or it's going to be a restraining order, but we'll get into that later.
I got a couple of court cases next week, as a matter of fact.
Have a good lawyer. Tonight's guest, the man behind the glass, if you will. We are talking about working with artists such as Rush, Slipknot, Bush, Deftones, Ghost, and more importantly for our listeners, of course, and us as fans as well, Alice in Chains, and most recently, the Jerry Cantrell Brighton album, in a mixture of mixing, engineering, producing, etc. We have Mr. Paul Fig with us this evening. Paul, how are you doing?
Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm doing great. You know, just doing it up in Los Angeles. A little mini heat wave happening right now.
Yeah, how is the weather up there down in LA today?
Well, it was really nice the past couple of days, and it was really chilly last night. And today was like 98 or something, 95. So just instantly summertime. I
think we have like 38 degrees, 70-mile-an-hour winds, and blizzard snow today in South Dakota.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, not cool.
Keep your jacket
It's going to be 70 in 2 days, though. So, you know, we'll thaw up a little bit.
One question about LA weather. Do you get a lot of wind or not really? Because I am truly looking at moving because I am tired of the wind that we're getting.
We get wind, but it depends on where you move. There's a place called Porter Ranch on your way through Chatsworth into Topanga Canyon. That spot's always on the news. So if you don't like wind, don't move there.
Got it. Duly noted.
Well, Paul, thanks for jumping on again. Let's get. I know we'll get to the Alice in Chains, the Jerry Cantrell stuff, all the fun stuff we all want to hear about. But how did you get your start in the business?
Well, okay, so I guess this would start all the way back in my Amen days. So I joined this band, Amen, and we signed to Roadrunner. We toured around the world a couple of times. Then we got off Roadrunner and signed with Virgin, and we were doing our second record with Virgin at Sound City. And our singer just, fell off the rails, and I saw it happening and had a powwow with him, and it didn't turn out good. And I'm like, all right, well, this is my time to leave. But at the same time, I'm at Sound City, and I'd been creating a relationship with, the staff there and the management. And I'm like, hey, look, I'd love to come down here and work. What do I need to do? Bring my resume down? They're like, you're hired. So I went from Virgin Records to the runner desk overnight.
When about was this, and how many years ago?
That was the end of 2000.
Oh, wow.
So 2001 was when I pretty much started.
And what drew you to that field in particular? Was it just being around it so often or having control finally?
Well, not really control, but I'd always done demos with Casey Chaos. That was the singer of Amen. And, I was always striving to get the fidelity together. And I understand his setup in his garage. It was, it was a little analog console with an analog tape machine. It was, through the mid 90s, that's what we had. And, and then when I started when I was working at Sound City as an artist, I was piecing it all together. I'm like, oh, this is how we do it in the garage. And I'm just, kind of piecing it all together. But, I'm on this amazing Neve console, and we're using a tape machine, and Mike Frazier's the engineer, and Ross Robinson's producing. And I was just like, oh, okay. So, I just
figuring it out.
Yeah, figuring out. I just needed to change because, when you played live music for, it was pretty much, that was my life. It's like I always had like a groovy day job, and to fund playing live with bands. So I was in a professional band. We were touring, and that stopped after 7 years. So I needed something to do that was still creative, and it just seemed like the right thing to do. It was a really smooth transition. It was a little scary in the beginning because all of a sudden you're letting go of everything touring in bands, playing guitar, you name it. And, I couldn't ask for a different scenario. It's like, I wouldn't change anything. Like there are no regrets.
So that's interesting. So like life on the road then, was it hard to stop all the touring and all the stuff that you do on the road and then you just stay put?
Yeah. So, it's like Amen was kind of a punk rock band, and I had this punk rock kind of ethos about, okay, well, I've got this, little punk rock flop pad in Koreatown, and I don't have to have like any type of special job to afford to live there, put gas in my car, buy guitar strings, pedals, whatever I need to do my live gigs. But when the band was on the road, that's when I made money, because all of a sudden I'm getting paid PDs $40 a day. Can you believe it? So lucrative. Just, to be on the road and destroy my guitar every night. And I loved it. That's all I wanted to do. And, then that stopped. So it was like, okay, now I'm working as a runner at Sound City. And I know there are kids out of recording school that would have killed to sit in the chair I was sitting in. So I never took anything for granted. I never thought I was special. It's like, I'm going to start at the bottom just like everybody else. And that's what I did.
Sound City back then, they were like the biggest in LA, weren't they, for a while?
Yeah. So 2000, it was the hot spot. Like, Nirvana or in the early 90s kind of put them back on the map. Everybody, like all my heroes were going through there. Joe Barresi, Dave Sardi, Matt Hyde, Jim Scott, Dave Bianco, like you name it. There's just a list of like amazing producer engineers going through that studio, tracking drums or tracking whole bands. And, I was so lucky to be part of that, because nowadays it's not that way. But so I started in 2001. We're still hitting tape and then transferring to Pro Tools. And then Pro Tools finally came out with HD, I think in mid 2001, and everyone started shifting over. It's like, hey, this sounds great. We don't need to deal with the tape machine anymore. Because that's an expense in itself. I mean, you have to have a tech come down and constantly service that thing. So it was pretty fun. I wouldn't say it wasn't the biggest studio in town, but it was in Van Nuys in a funky little spot, and off the 405, and Budweiser factory was on the other side of the freeway. And if you went out there in the late afternoon, early evening, you'd get a big whiff of what they were cooking.
Your first job there at Sound City was runner.
Yes.
Whatever's asked for you, you kind of did.
Taking food orders, sweeping the floors, mopping, sweeping, mopping, scrubbing the toilets, it's like, you name it, fixing cables, I had to learn how to solder really quick.
Oh, wow.
Read manuals, help load in and load out. I don't know if you ever seen like Tom Petty roll in, but he's got, an 18-wheeler with just all sorts of gear, Benmont's gear, all his organs, amps, acoustic guitars, you name it, you're there to help. So anything you can do to help get the job done as quickly and smoothly as possible, you're in.
So that was quite literally a sweep the shop situation, just organically coming together.
Yes.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Looking back, that's probably the best thing that you did then to get in the business now, right? Because you were in Amen, started Sound City, and then what transitioned to the next step for you then? Just time?
The next step, yeah. So I was there for about 6 years, from runner to assistant. So you didn't become an assistant engineer until there was somebody vacated and left a spot. So my good friend Miles Wilson, who's now the front of house guy for Pixies, and he also does Dead Can Dance and a couple of other things. But he's like, hey, I really want to go out on tour with the Pixies. They're my favorite band in the universe. And our studio manager was like, all right, well, have fun. Then she turns around and is like, all right, you're up, sink or swim.
The opportunity like that, you just can't pass up. I mean,
no. So, I dove in. Oh, I was going to say, and then, so I did that for a few years, learned the ropes. And then another Sound City alumni, Nick Raskulenix, came in and we worked together. And he was working, his engineer was also a Sound City guy that was assisting on the Amen sessions. So he decided to leave. Yeah, he decided to leave Nick Raskulenix camp, and Nick needed somebody to help record a record. He's like, hey, Fig, how do you feel about, coming over to 606 and helping me record the Stone Sour record? I'm like, absolutely. And then I transitioned out of Sound City and I went freelance since.
So when you say freelance, being a freelance engineer, how does that compare to being stationary with one studio?
Well, studios don't usually provide the engineer. They'll provide an assistant engineer, the person that knows the room, knows where all the bodies are buried. Can patch you around on the patch bay. Help you with mic selection, get everything set up before the engineer steps through the door. So, the engineer is the guy that makes the producer look great. So the assistant engineer's job is to make the engineer look like a genius.
Excellent. Good setup.
So can you ever be the producer and the engineer then on one album?
You can. So you have to wear both hats. And I kind of do that. I did that on Jerry's record. But it's with the budgets nowadays, you kind of have to do both unless you have enough money to hire, hey, I really like the way that sounds. Can we get Vance Powell down here? That'd be great. But he's expensive.
Yeah.
So pricing, that's got to be one of the biggest things you've seen change. I mean, as far as in this career path, I mean, how has the whole field evolved just from your perspective?
Well, yeah. So, coming up at Sound City, I saw all these engineers and producers, they had racks and cases just coming off of a, cartage, and they bring all this stuff in. And now you just don't see that anymore because there's no budget for that. So, it's the downloading thing. Really, I saw that happen pretty fast. It's like all of a sudden those baby band budgets for $150,000, that disappeared super fast. Now, you've got to do like a $500,000 record in half the money or a quarter of that. And then,
Wow.
So it's like just getting a $40,000 budget to do a record is like, oh wow, finally, there's some money, and it's just not the way. Yeah, it's not the way it used to be. So there's been definitely shrinkage on this recording studio front. A lot of studios closed because they just couldn't stay in business any longer. So, sometimes the property the studio's on is worth more than the actual business.
Crazy. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Example of a $40,000 produced album versus 500,000. Is there noticeable differences for fans like us that don't maybe have the engineering ear, we'll call it, and correct me if I'm wrong. Are we noticing like a lack of quality engineered music because of the lack of budget?
No. So basically the quality of work doesn't change. I mean, having Pro Tools kind of makes things a little bit quicker and easier. You don't have to wait for rewind. You don't have to source out, 50 reels of tape, which that's expensive already. You can put everything on a hard drive and hey, all right, we just tracked the whole band live at this one studio. Now we can go to this smaller studio and do all the overdubs. And they've got Pro Tools and, you can, you obviously don't need a giant studio to do overdubs. So you can find budget friendly spots all over town.
A little bit more efficiency and creativity is really what Brad came from.
The days of, spending, a year on a record and, ordering food every day and booze or whatever, oh, hey, I don't feel like recording today. Let's go to the bar down the street. That's over. You can't do that. You have to be smart. You have to be clean with your money.
So speaking of rooms, then, so Dave's room, tell me about that.
Okay. Did you look at that on the website?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was a space, my friend Dave Bianco, who I worked with at Sound City, we became really good friends. He was looking for a spot, like he saw the writing on the wall with budgets. So he knew he wanted to keep working and producing bands. So he knew he had to find his own space. And he was looking around and he found this spot and, he was like, wow, he recognized the control room because it was very similar to the one he would mix at Larrabee. And he knew it was Vincent Van Hoff control room. And he told the landlords, like, I think I can work with this. And as he, inspected the space even more, all the walls are like 1.5 feet thick and there's glass everywhere, line of sight for everything. And everything's, there's patch points all over the space. He just, he's like, this is a great spot. Like it's a little like mini A&M studio. I don't know if you've been over there, but like it was purposely built to be a recording studio, was never designed to be anything else. So you just can't do that nowadays. So he took that place over and in 2000, around 2006, 2007, and, built it up and really made it nice. And I was having my bachelor party back in 2018. We had a blast, steaks at Taylor's, and went to a bar and had drinks. And 3 days later, he died. And I was like, oh my gosh. And, I had to keep myself together, go through the wedding. And then a few weeks later, his boys sat me down, and my partner and a couple of other people, and had this discussion about, hey, what are we going to do with this place? And I was like, okay, well, let's figure this out. Let's not, they wanted to keep it going. So I crunched some numbers, and my partner, David Sprang, partnered up with me, and we started a whole new business. And Dave Bianco called it Dave's Room. So we started a business, Dave's Room, because he'd never started that business. And so, one of our first clients was Billy Corgan, and he said he was in there for a month writing. And, luckily from then on, we just, were able to keep the place going and stay in the black. It's like, it was such a miracle. And, but people walk in and they see, one, it's a private parking lot, and two, that it's a real space. It's not just, an industrial complex turned into a studio.
Right.
It's an actual real studio with, there isn't a right angle in there. It's all weird. So I don't know if you saw the layout. Yeah.
Its purpose is apparent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's amazing. So, I mean, right before COVID, basically that went down, right? Like just the year before the pandemic, essentially.
Yeah.
Year
So
and a half.
2018. Yeah. So we had that first year was pretty rough. So we were, thank God my partner and I have, different camps in LA that we can, reach out to help book the place and bring our projects in. So 2019 or 2020 comes around. I just finished drums with Jerry at this place called Igloo. We set up for guitars, and right at the end of that, like all over the news, hey, this COVID thing's coming around. It's getting bad. And then we see all the numbers going up, and all right, we're locking down on the 20th, I think it was March 20th, and we loaded out the 21st. But we were the only people we were seeing, so we weren't really worried. It's like we work all day and night in the studio, go home, shower, come back, do the same thing. And, we did all those guitars in 11 days. It was pretty, like I've worked with Cantrell since 2008, and that was lightning fast.
All 10 songs then in that amount of time?
There was 15 songs we tracked. Ooh. And so I was like, we've got to, if we're going to get all the, there's tons of acoustics, there's tons of main rhythms, there's tons of flavor guitars. There's as many guitar tracks as there are vocal tracks. So, and knowing Jerry and how he works, I knew, we had to pay so much attention to tuning and just making sure everything was spot on, because as soon as he starts stacking those guitars, you start noticing, hey, that's pitchy. So I didn't want that to happen. So we made sure it was good.
You guys had Herb out there too, right?
Yeah, Herb was there. He was tuning everything up or intonating, you name it. He was there making it happen. And poor Herb, because he was freaking out because the COVID thing was coming in hot. He's like, I've got to get out of here before they lock the state down. Because if he couldn't get back to Minnesota,
Minneapolis, Minnesota. Yeah.
If he couldn't get back, he was going to be bummed. But it took, I want to say it took him like 4 days or 5 days to.
It got snowed in somewhere in Minnesota. I remember on his Facebook, it got snowed in.
And I think his car, the rental car he had, broke down, and he's so lucky, because that could have turned south really quick. But he made it. Spoiler alert, he's on tour right now.
Yeah, I just talked to him in St. Paul here last week. Or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was.
Yep.
You mentioned a couple, you mentioned mixing, you mentioned engineer, you mentioned producing, and the assistant engineer makes the engineer look good. The engineer makes the producer look good. What does everybody do? What is the differences between those roles, in knowing that sometimes an individual like yourself can be wearing multiple hats at the same time?
So the assistant should be the guy that knows the room inside and out. He should be paying attention, whether he's being asked to or not. Hey, if we're having a discussion about guitar pedals or switching an amp, he's he should be ready to go before I even ask him, hey, we're going to use this amp. He should be like already like ready to jump into action. I've been at places where it's like, we have this discussion. Hey, we're going to switch out a kick drum or a snare drum. And hey, where's my assistant? Oh, I got to call that number on the chalkboard because he's nowhere I can find him. That was a drag. But anyways, yeah. So the assistant is to make the job as smooth and quick as possible. I mean, because, you know, time is money. You know, it's like you're spending a lot of money to be in the recording studio. You got studio time, you've got the producer's time, you've got the engineer's time. You know, it all adds up. So the assistant engineer is there to, you know, hey, if something's wrong with the console or a piece of gear, he knows how to either wiggle it and make it work, or he's going to figure out what's wrong. Oh, maybe it was a wrong patch on his part. Either way, make it right, and let's move. So and then the engineer, he's in charge of basically interpreting the producer and the artist's vision. So, hey, I want my drums to sound like whatever, you know, Massive Reality, you know, Sufferbus, whatever. It's like, okay, I get that reference. And then I'll do this. And then I tell the assistant, hey, let's make sure we have these mics on hand. We're going to do this. I'm in charge of getting the sounds up, mic placement, mic pre, EQ, levels to tape or Pro Tools, and making sure, you know, there isn't like a crazy buzz in something. Then I'm going to ask the assistant, what's that noise and how long has it been there and why are we hearing it now? So that's my job, stay on top of that. And then the producer, you switch hats. Hey, that performance was a little too far leaning back, or that thing was pitchy, or you didn't bend it all the way up to the note, or I think you can do better. Hey, I think that part should just disappear altogether. What do you think? And then have that conversation.
So that push has got to be intense. Does that come easier with artists you worked for multiple times, and having that kind of communication?
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky with Jerry, and you know, he'll play something, and right in the middle I'll hear something, and I'll just look, and he's like, "God damn it, Fig," and he'll stop.
He already knows.
Yeah, or I'll just hit stop, and he's like, "You're right." And you know, but you know, I do that with artists I don't know also, because hey, it's got to be better. You know, the bar's up here.
That language is definitely there.
Yeah, there's a bedside manner to the whole thing. You can't just be like, that's wrong. You know, you've got to be diplomatic about how you phrase things. Like, what do you mean clunky?
And you have to like back that up with, that means this.
So do you ever get the Alice guys over in Dave's room then, or are you usually somewhere else?
Oh yeah, no, we did pre-production for Devil Put Dinosaurs there.
Yeah.
So they spent 3 months just fleshing out songs. So I sat in a room with Jerry. Actually, that record was a wild ride because I just come off of a gig in Nashville. It was like 14 weeks. I got home, I had a day off. Then we set up at this one studio, Ocean. They were kind of in between writing and rehearsing for their South American tour. And then, you know, Jerry had shoulder surgery right then. He had like a rotator cuff thing. And, you know, and then they went on tour and they came back and they needed, you know, well, he felt like, you know, he was like, I want to have a pile of songs before I step into a studio. So I just met him over at his house and we set up in his little music room, and I just sat there and facilitated him, you know, writing. So trying to be as seamless as possible. I become invisible. I want him to just get involved in only the music part and, you know, concentrating on his fretboard. And, you know, I watched Devil Put Dinosaurs here, that main arpeggiated riff just bubble up off his fretboard. I saw him wrestling with it, and all of a sudden it came out, and I was like, that's killer.
Oh,
I get to see that stuff. It's like front row seat to that. You know, so my job is to stay out of his way, but capture.
Sure. And that was a pretty good album. So you got nominated for a Grammy for that one, right?
I did. Yeah.
No big deal.
No. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's pretty awesome, but at the same time, it's like that's the same institution that, like, you know, hey, Slipknot just lost their drummer,
snubbed.
And you know, how many Grammys nomination did they need and a Grammy win before they just forget all about him?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like one of the biggest metal bands on the planet.
Yeah.
Period.
Absolutely.
I mean, then they have Metallica, but you know what I mean?
Right.
But so yes, it is a big deal.
Sure.
Is it more like a your hard work has been recognized officially, and then the other stuff can happen?
It was a nice surprise. Not like my phone rang anymore. It'd be nice, but I don't know if it really matters because I think it's more for the pop stars. We got the Grammy.
Yeah.
We're the best. But you know, I think, you know, rock just keeps moving forward, and I love it. It's they're not trying to get on the red carpet. They're trying to do something real, especially a band like Alice in Chains. And then, you know, and then Jerry Cantrell and his solo stuff. And that's all he wants. He wants to just create and give back. And I think that's awesome. I want to be part of that.
You think there'll be a new Alice record coming up sometime soon? Not soon, but relatively soon.
That would be awesome. I have no idea, but I was like chiming into Sean Kinney's ear. I'm like, hey, you're going to be down in town getting ready for this tour in August. I'm like, you know, hey, just think about it.
You want to do some stuff?
Yeah.
Doors open.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, that, of course, we're talking about a time in the aftermath of 2020. You mentioned earlier about having to stop and kind of put together that Brighton album in the midst of COVID. What's the aftermath of that been? Or what was 2020 like also?
Well, so, you know, Jerry wanted that record to be done by May of 2020. But all of a sudden, all the venues are closed. My studio is closed. Like, my doors are locked until June 1st. That's when we were able to open back up. But so, you know, we set up at Jerry's house, and, you know, we had lots of vocals to do. And there was like a handful of maybe guitar solos and extra flavor bits. He would just come up like, hey, Fig, I got this idea. I got this extra harmony thing or this guitar thing I want to put on this song. I'm like, absolutely, let's do it. But, you know, we took our time because it was like, hey, my throat's a little scratchy today. Maybe I don't want to come in today, and we'll take 10 days off. And then he'd do the same thing.
That's when it got scary.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, we're all self-quarantining and just staying home, barely going to the grocery store. I mean, like back then, it was like gloves and masks, and you're wiping your hands.
Chernobyl suit.
Exactly. And, you know, so it was sketchy. And I don't want to be the guy that gets Jerry Cantrell. I don't want to be the guy that gives him COVID and, you know, puts him on a respirator. So I was being extremely careful, you know, but we took our time. So, and that gave us, it was kind of a blessing because, you know, we could sit back and he could sit back and listen to his record. And, you know, he came up with extra harmonies and bits, and it was great because when we got together, we would just do it. And then we, you know, and then he was like, oh, I want to do this Elton John cover. And I was like, I know just the guy. And, you know, we were all home, and this guy, Vince, my buddy Vince Jones, was home, and went over to his little studio, and he just banged it out. It was awesome.
Well, I remember when I was at Pico, he ended the Pico show with a Goodbye Elton John cover, and I couldn't believe it. And I remember, at the Pico show in 2019 in December.
Yeah. I missed that. I was so bummed.
Oh, it was so awesome. It was the best show I've ever been to, probably.
But you got to be at the Grammy Museum, right?
I did. I made sure I recorded that thing. I had 2 rigs. I didn't want, this is the only time they've played this stuff live, like this new record, and I didn't want anything to go. I had 2 redundant recording setups happening, and it was, you know, it was wild.
That was a great show.
Fun.
Really cool.
Were you there?
Yeah, I got to go, and it was just phenomenal.
Oh, wow. Are you in LA?
Yeah. I'm not in LA, unfortunately, but I made the trip from Texas, from West Texas. Wow. Totally worth it, though. I mean, I got to hear the 50 nicknames he has for you, which was great. It was phenomenal.
That was a riot.
Yeah. The only part that I was kind of bummed when it aired was, of course, all the talking got, you know, edited out because it was about the show. But that was an experience.
Yeah, the comedian there just kind of ran off into, you know, nowhere land.
And then he kept interrupting. And
yeah, what was that guy's name? He just got fired from that TV show.
Yeah.
Jeff Garland.
Yes,
Jeff Garland. Yeah, he's funny.
He was very loud. Like, even if he didn't have a microphone in his hand, I was like turning everybody else's microphones down. It was wild. But
oh God, that must have been a weird thing to mix too. Yeah,
well, I was mixing it. I was mixing it for the broadcast. So I'm just like, oh my God, he's in everything. But I got it together.
Yeah, but well done. It
the
sounded
broadcast
phenomenal.
is great. Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you. Thank you. Yeah.
So you started with Alice back in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the first album with William Duvall, then obviously, right?
Yes. Yep.
And then you've been through the next two with them, right? The Devil Put Here in Rain Your Fog. Now finally Brighton. What else have you been doing since Brighton? They've been keeping pretty busy.
So I've got there's a few things happening. I've been working with this guy Chris Lewis from formerly of the Kinnison. It's been super fun. I'm actually part of this project now. So I produced his first record, and it was like really quick. He had a drummer and a bass player. They learned the stuff right on the studio floor and tracked it live, no click. And he came in and did vocal overdubs, and then I mixed it and he released it. And that record, sadly to say, his first single came out when George Floyd was murdered, and he just, then he had all the election press. His record just got buried. There was nothing more important.
The timing.
Yeah. So and he couldn't tour it, so it was a shame. But now, since then, he's written almost 90 something songs, and I take a rough mix of what he's got and go on my little trail run, come back home, flesh it out, send it to him, and he's like, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" And I never heard it that way, and I'm like, "All right, this song is a contender," and then we'd move on. So I've got that happening. I'm working with a new band called Filth is Eternal. The kind of a power violence grindcore thing happening from Seattle. I'm very excited about this band. I've worked with some other grindcore bands, this LA premier band Despise You, and he's a good friend of mine. And I just, I like to do, that's just like, they're not doing it for fame and fortune. They're doing it because that's all they can do. They're pushing it out. They're pushing out all their energy into this thing. And it's kind of like jazz. You're just there to capture all that angst and lightning and, give it to the people who want it.
Is that something you look for when you record other artists? Because I was just actually telling JR before the show how much I love jazz, and we were talking about that. So it's funny that finally got brought up. But is that kind of life and organic chemistry, so to speak, something you look for?
I do. I guess my nightmare would be, hey, do you want to work on this record? Great. And then it's like all programmed drums, all synths and programmed synths. And, the vocal part would be exciting, but that would be not my wheelhouse. I want to capture the reaction between the musicians. I want to capture the energy coming off the studio floor. And, it's kind of nowadays, live recording is a luxury because all these other studios around town are sometimes just one room, or if you can afford it to get into a big room, then you can track live. But that's what I like doing. My studio is designed and built to be a live tracking studio.
So speaking of that, like the energy, so just thinking like when Jerry Cantrell's got his original Rampage blue dress guitar in his hands and he just belts out an awesome riff. Like, do you know right away that it's a hit, or do you kick it around a little bit? I mean, what's the communication like?
So if he's writing, I'm recording everything. Like I sit down, I hit record, and he starts playing, whether he's got a click track, a drum machine, or whatever. I'm recording it, and all of a sudden I hear something, and I'll drop a marker, and I'll write like, that was cool, or that's a sick riff, or that's heavy as fuck, or whatever. And then, it's kind of just part of his writing process. We'll go back through. I'm like, hey, this was cool. This was cool. This was cool. And then he'll be like, oh, what about that other thing? I'm like, oh, that's right over here. Just staying organized and keeping track. Cause he can sit there for, 45 minutes or an hour, just getting warmed up. And sometimes there's some magic in there.
An album like Brighton example, just something relatively new. How many hours do you have recorded? Total hours of stuff recorded before you actually get to a record?
Oh man. So, we had the whole record recorded in demo form before the record, but it was, we all did it in his music room. It was programmed drums. And then I would take it over to a buddy's place and, hey, can you throw some real drums on this just to get a vibe? And then Jerry would listen. He was like, oh, that's killer. Then he'd re-record the guitars to lock to those drums. And that's a huge difference. Even though, hey, that drum machine or that click track was right on the grid and Jerry played to it, it feels different against drums. Even if I edited the drums to the grid, it feels different. So he always retracts to real drums.
The real question is, how'd you get all the work done with those cats running around all the time?
Oh man, I've had those cats like jump and stop or meow right in the middle of a vocal take. And, it's like, and when Jerry sings, it's like he's only got so many minutes on his voice before all the top end disappears. He's got a really, I think, instantly recognizable sound. And, it's like I want the quality of his voice to be the top notch. So all of a sudden, the cats come in, they're hungry, they want attention. They're like, meow, meow. It's funny. But, sometimes you just have to throw them out of the room, but then they meow through the door and it's coming through the microphone. So there might be a couple of spots you might be able to hear, but you have to featured. You have to solo a vocal or just really pay attention.
Can only Jerry Cantrell get away with having his cats meowing while you're working?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, yeah, I guess. Yeah. Cause, I guess sometimes dogs show up at the studio, but then they're a lot more mellow. Cats just do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah, fucking cats.
Not a cat fan. I know the goat is. I know Carmen is. Not a fan.
Not conversation a cat before.
Yeah.
If it's an animal, it's good.
Yeah. I love cats. I've got 2 cats.
Oh, what kind of cats?
I've got, we rescued a little snowshoe, kind of like American short hair.
Oh.
Looks like a Siamese. His hair, like as soon as you touch him, it's all over you. And a little polydactyl orange tabby. And
my family used to do
amazing
polydactyls.
Yeah. That's
they're special.
Extra
the little mitts.
Yeah. But they were a what do you call that?
A bonded pair?
A bonded pair. Tabby, his parents all passed away at birth. Like they both all had parvo. And he was the sole survivor. And I'm not sure about Royce. That's my little Siamese guy. But they were both fresh out of the incubator, just chilling in a little cage, and they were already like all over each other and friends. So they're brothers.
Nice. They're coming home together.
Yep. Mm-hmm. They're great.
Cat talk is always important on this podcast. Sorry, guys.
No, you're good. So I kind of brought up earlier a little bit about the original Blue Dress Rampage. He's got that and the No War guitar, of course, the 284, I think, Rampages. Did he use either one of those on Brighton, or can you say that?
I want to say one of them had to get shipped over from either Hard Rock or museum installation. Was it Mopop? Yeah. So he got that. We definitely used it on the record, and then he got his EVH Wolfgang back, which was amazing. It was like he was telling me the story. I'm like, how did that happen? Like, well, one, how did a guitar leave a recording studio without anybody noticing? And and then I guess luckily he had enough photos of the thing, and you could see the wood grain on the neck, and boom, that's the one. That's
that's detail.
I know the story pretty well. I'm pretty good friends with the gentleman who I'll leave him nameless, but he doesn't want the recognition, but I know the story pretty well. It's pretty phenomenal they got that back. It's amazing how that come together. Yeah,
so he was super lucky. But we used all those guitars. I don't know if you saw pictures. I have I'll post some photos if I can find them again and get permission. Jerry might have a shot on his Instagram page, but he brings his guitar vault, which has got a dozen guitars in each one. Then there's guitar boats on top of each one filled. And then then he got his Gibson endorsement, and then all those guitars are in front. And there was a lot of guitars involved. I mean, and they all do different things. Yeah, pretty much. Because the Rampages do their thing. It's kind of a secret to his sound, but then so are the Les Pauls. And that's and then pulling the Telly out or the Strat, and then he's got like the G&L Strat versions too, and those are cool.
Do you happen to remember which any song in particular that he used the gold top on?
The gold top,
that EVH one.
I actually have it written down, and it was because he had the Floyd on there, so it was something that needed that bounce. It might have been Brighton.
Nice.
The little harmonic things and the ooh, 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 ooh.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been that.
Cool.
Or Siren Song.
Love that song.
Too.
Very cool.
I noticed when I seen Jerry and the guys in St. Paul here in the first show of their tour that they ended with Goodbye. No, they didn't end with Goodbye, but it was in there towards the end. So you talk about different sounds, like, it's bright or sounds clunky. What would you consider something called that was called the Chusky sound? What's that like in your head? Like, what's that Chusky sound?
Chusky. Could it be like an electric dobro type of thing?
I don't know what that is, but I'll take your word for it.
Something kind of deep and
deep and
out there,
deep, mid-rangey, and like it's like kind of a resonator guitar. So maybe that could be Chusky.
Nice,
Chusky.
Next time you're tracking,
you could chug along with it, but it's got a husky thing, and it's acoustic. Nice. So it's it's still organic. You don't need an amp.
You'll be jamming out System of a Down here someday. You'll be like, "Oh, this is where'd Chusky come from? This is definitely Chusky."
Yeah.
Real quick, I did have a question on something that we briefly mentioned a little bit ago, Mopop, which was just a phenomenal thing to watch, thing to see put together. Every performance was just wonderful and perfect. How did that come together? And on your end, mixing it, correct? Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. What was that like?
So I was hired to, I got a call. Hey, Jerry and the band would love for you to be up at Mopop to help capture this recording. I'm like, sure. And I get there, and thank God they had the budget, or I don't know who may have had the decision, but brought in Jeff Ott from London Bridge Studios, because he brought in a rack of really amazing mic pre's. So I was like, oh, this is genius. Perfect. So, we were just there and, to capture the recording. And then those guys were like, warming up. Those guys hadn't played in a while. Like, that was in the end of 2020, right? And they had stopped their tour in the end of 2018 or fall of 2019.
Yeah. Yep. Fall of 2019. Yep.
Yeah. So,
and then it's Pico in December after that.
Yeah. So they haven't seen each other since. And so they needed to get it together. So there was a day of rehearsal, and then the day we tracked, and then, I'm listening to Jerry, and, I could hear his voice kind of doing his thing. And he's like, "Do you think we got it?" And I'm like, absolutely. And so boom, we caught it, and it was filmed. And I just took those tracks home, and I just went to town on it.
Yeah, I was going to say the timing, of course, made it very powerful, very, oh my God, this is coming out of such a dark time kind of thing.
Yeah.
Did you have to mix their the speaking portions too, or was it strictly just the performance?
No, just their performance. But so me being a fan of Alice in Chains, and that live record, the live MTV Unplugged, I was like, I really want to make sure there's microphones on these acoustics, and that's kind of the difference. And so but Sean's out behind them trying to kill his drum set, and it's basically these mics are becoming extra room mics. So it was a balancing act to get that to work, but it turned out great.
Did their spacing help with that too? Because the setup looked very visually cool.
Yeah, no, it was super cool, and it would have worked, but that place is like a giant echo chamber. So when Sean is just murdering
high
his
ceilings,
snare, it's high ceilings and shiny, reflective
metal
surfaces. Yeah, exactly. And Sean's hitting his snare as hard as he can in some of those spots. I'm just like, oh my God, Sean, relax. But he's doing his thing, and I'm not going to tell him to stop. So it turned out great. I mean, my job as an engineer is to make that stuff work. It's like, hey, if I can move a mic around and kind of, I'm going to get technical here. I use the AKG 451 EBs with the CK3 capsule that are a tight bubble. It's not like a big balloon around the mic to pick up sound. It's a tighter sound. So I had that, right in front of, I don't know if you look at the video, you can see it there. The director is like, can you move that down farther? And I'm like, ugh. So, I made it work.
Oh God, that balancing act must have been something too, like working with them too.
Uh-huh.
So they did No Excuses in your decision. Was there a third or a fourth song that didn't make the cut?
No, just those two. Yeah.
Yeah, great songs, by the way.
Because there was so many other artists doing other songs. So they had to wait till everyone picked their songs and then pick their songs.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. So speaking of that, so we went to our Chusky Boy fans out there in social media. Beth McGovern would like to know, what was your favorite performance from the Mopop? Hers was Liv Warfield, Put You Down.
Liv Warfield.
Lots of love to Liv. She was she did the Put You Down, and she did some vocals on the Nancy song too.
Oh, okay.
She's great.
You're asking what my favorite performance was?
I don't know if you're.
Well, the Mark Lanigan one was kind of like, I was like, wow. And then now I'm like, I mean, that guy was such a powerhouse.
Yeah.
And it was such a shame to lose him so soon. I was just like, oh my gosh.
Wild, yeah.
Yeah.
Another cat lover.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I've read his book. It's pretty amazing, the rock and roll stories. I'm gonna get to my last fan question we have here. My friend Jesse Shiley from Lost Kevin Brewery. What's your favorite album you've worked on, and why is it presumably the Mars Volta Amputexture?
Why would that one be?
He's confident.
Oh yeah. That was a super fun record. I got an engineering credit. The actual engineer on that record was losing his mind. He had just come off the tour with Mars Volta, John DeBon, good friend of mine, and he just needed a break. So they set up at this place called the Paramore up in Silver Lake, and they had this whole compound. We wired it up and mic'd everything, and they had already did drums, so we just needed to capture guitars. So I was just sitting there with Omar, and Cedric would pop in every now and again, and we worked for about, I think it was a week, and just enough time to give John a little break. But that was great working with those guys. My old band Bluebird toured with those guys, or we did shows at the Troubadour back in the day. But they're super fun and creative, and it was great to work on that. But I would have to say my most favorite, it wasn't for a record, but it was for Neil Peart. And we did the new Hockey Night theme song, Hockey Night Canada.
Wow.
And me and Nick Roskalinex, he was like, hey, Fig, we're going to do this thing. I'm like, all right. And, we got 3 passes from Neil live with like a 17 or 19 piece brass band. And that was it. Then they left and went to go shoot a video for it. But that thing was amazing. Like, he rearranged the song, and you can look it up on YouTube. It's pretty ridiculous. He custom DW kit, just Neil Peart all the way out, just a giant, ridiculous drum set. And that was super fun. It was, it was high stress because, the drum showed up, the drum tech tuned everything the night before. I'm trying to get sounds with Nick, and he's hitting the drums. I'm like, I don't think this is going to work out. That tech might need to come back. And then Neil showed up, and him and Nick just start talking. And all of a sudden I see Neil taking off his shoes, and he starts to put on these Capizios. And I was like, he's going to play. So I just ran out of the tracking room and into the control room, and he just started playing, and that kit came to life. It was like night and day. I couldn't believe it. I'm just quick from tom to tom to tom, the snare, get the kick drum together, boom. It's like, that's the sound. And we're ready to go for the next day.
Insane.
And so that was the most fun. And he was such a great guy. And he actually, Nick calls me Figuroni, and he was leaving, and he goes, all right, see you later, Figuroni. And he left, and I was like, Neil Peart just called me Figuroni.
Need that on like a plaque now.
Yeah, that was so amazing. And, then I met Getty and Alex after that, and I did strings for Rush. But that was the most fun. I mean, it's always great working with Nick, because every record we do is hilarious and just a blast. But, we do a lot of work. It's hard work, too.
You work with Nick on I know with all the Alice albums you have, do you work with him for other bands as well, I assume? Yeah.
So we did the Ghost record together.
Nice.
And that was, it's like, wow. I'm like, I'd already heard of the band, and he was playing the demos while we were wrapping up Devil Put Dinosaurs Here. And I was like, dude, that's killer. It's like, they've got this like total retro thing happening, and it's still heavy, and, all these keyboards, and just a left field, just hanging a left on what the metal world was doing right then.
Sure.
I'm like, I'm totally in. And, that was a blast doing it too. Then, I was in Nashville for all of the tracking, and then he did the vocals with Tobias. Now I can say his name back then. And then they tried to hire a choir in Nashville, and they just couldn't. Nobody would sing those satanic lyrics.
So it was about the words, not even like a budget. The words. Wow.
No, it was about the words. So they hired David Campbell. He put together a 28-piece choir, and we went to this place called the Bridge Recorders in Glendale. And I had a bunch of mics up. They all sat there. He had arranged everything. It's like I still have the scores, like the actual like manuscript paper of what they were singing. And it would, I mean, you got to hear that record. It's from the get-go. It's
perfect.
over the top.
Start to finish.
Yeah, it was so amazing. I was just like, all right, wow. I'm like, all right, this is cool. So I'm Skyping with Nick and he's Skyping with Tobias in Sweden. So it's just like I'm looking at Nick, and then he's got Tobias on the screen behind him. It was so wild.
It's like the mirror effect. You can see
Pretty
forever.
much, yeah.
I know I'm jumping all over the place, Paul. You started off with Alice, Nick and working with Alice 2008. Tell me, so I remember, I don't know if it's an interview with Jerry and the guys, but Black Is Way to Blue, it was pretty deep. Some of those, it's the first album without Lane, of course, and kind of, I think the track Black Is Way to Blue is probably the most difficult. Was it were you around for those? Like, did you get to witness some of that heavy stuff? Wow.
Yeah. So we were at Henson. We started that record at 606, and then we moved to Henson Studio B and finished up all the overdubs and working on vocals. And it came time to do Black Is Way to Blue. And, Jerry, all the lyrics are done and he's singing it and Sean's there at the desk and you could hear pin drop. I mean, Jerry's in between takes. It's like, all right. And, it was just pretty emotional. And, Sean had to just kind of stop and gather himself. And, it's such a beautiful song. And, it's the goodbye letter to Lane. And that's what it was. And we captured it. And, I don't know if it wasn't emotional, it wouldn't be good. It had to be. He had to tap into all of that. And that's what we're there for.
Did you guys get Elton then right away, or was it after the song was done? You put him on, or how'd that come about? I heard it was Baldy that got him out. Yes,
yeah. So he's a connection there between him and the Elton camp, Baldy, and Todd Schuss. And then so he reached out and he was like, "Hey, Elton's totally down." Like, "Oh, that's badass." Like, "All right, Fig, we'll see you on Monday. We're gonna fly to Vegas." And I was like, "What? I'm not going with you guys."
Got left out there.
Yeah. So they did it, but it's like Elton. I don't know if you realize, so Alice tunes down a half step. So he had to hear. He's not going to tune his piano down a half step. It would make it easier a little bit, but he's a pro. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah. Did it take was it days or weeks by the time Elton they sent over the track?
No, they flew out over the weekend.
Oh, that's what I see.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, hey, this is going to happen. Great. Packed up a hard drive, took off, went to Vegas, tracked it.
I didn't know Elton was in Vegas. That's cool.
Yeah. He was in Vegas. I think he was he might have been doing a residency there already.
Sure. Yeah. I didn't know that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, it turned out beautiful. I mean, the whole album, all that. I mean, we love all their catalog of work, obviously, but I mean, all three, 2.0 Alice in Chains, you could call them, albums are unique, and they've all got bangers on them, and they've got emotional songs, and can't wait to see what they come up with next.
Yeah, like Even Rainier Fog and All I Am. I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah, absolutely.
That song, it just comes out of nowhere too.
Yeah.
Here's something you might not know. On Rainier Fog, the man, the silhouette of a person, is that Lane Staley, do you think, in the middle of the album? Or is that a top secret?
You know what? I don't know, because when they do the artwork, that's like them. So
far removed from what you get to do with them.
So I can ask, and I can get back to you.
Want to get him on the phone quick?
Yeah.
We'll wait.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't think so. I mean, who knows? I mean, we did track. And this was hard for them too, because we went back to Studio X where they had last recorded with Lane, and that was the last time they saw Lane. So
wild.
So that's a possibility. But they dealt with those demons, and Mike Inez will tell you, it's like, dude, it was heavy. It's like, we haven't been here since Lane, and it was what an amazing drum room. But I don't think it's around anymore. Sad to say.
I was actually gonna ask about, because my favorite part of that record is the drums, especially like the cymbals on the one just come in and they sound like this roaring beast out of nowhere again. What was the drum situation noteworthy there in particular? Because I love that.
Yeah, we did a couple of things. We would track Sean to tape. Like we'd come up with a take, right? Comp it. We would dump it to tape and then slow it down just a bit, just to give it
wow
a little bit more weight. Like, and then the drums would just get tuned down a hair, and then the cymbals just hang out just a little bit longer. I don't know if you could, tell. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Especially in headphones too. Like drone, the end just kind of goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there was a handful of tunes that went down on, but that happened on some of the other records too. Definitely on the first one, maybe not on Devil. I don't think we did that on. We didn't pull a tape machine on that record, I don't believe. Even though at Henson they have like a hallway filled with 24 track machines and 2-inch machines, 2-track machines. It's insane, and nobody uses them anymore.
Okay, but the tape is there just in case.
The tape machines are there. Then you got to buy the tape if you can find good batches. That's the other problem, which becomes my problem.
Right.
Hey, we want to record the tape. All right, hold on a second. Let me put the orders in. All right, we're going to get them next week. I'll see if this batch doesn't shed when I start recording on it.
Career-wise, we've talked about a lot of the artists you've worked with, projects you've worked on. Is there anything left that you haven't done that you still want to do, maybe with your own music or an artist you haven't worked with yet?
I'm game for just about anything. I grew up my parents owned a jazz club, so that's where the jazz thing came up. But, it's like I love rock and creating, that organic thing. I wouldn't say I'd want to get into hip hop, but I guess I'm not
something new.
Yeah, something new, fresh. But something new. I mean, like I don't know if you remember this band, Catherine Wheel. That would be a band. I love that.
Absolutely.
It's like I would, if that guy wanted to do a record, I'd be like, hey man, that'd be badass. Come on down. I'm ready.
That kind of brings me to another question that I actually had here. So I was talking about Alice specifically. It doesn't have to be about Alice in Chains though. But like when Jerry calls you and says, hey Paul, let's get Brighton going or get my solo album going. Like I'm sure you are set up as well as Dave's room is set up, weeks in advance. Like, are you able to shuffle things around and get kind of high priority clients in and get that done for them? And what's your work-life balance like? I know you're somewhat newly married. You have cats at home. You just moved. Like, you got a lot of stuff going on. Are you working like crazy hours?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I'm booked, I'm booked. So, whether it's 4 hours a day or 14 hours a day, like the Slipknot record, I'd get there at 9:30 and I'd get home at 2:30 or 3 every day. And then, hey, can you come in early tomorrow? We're gonna have the drum doctor show up and like deal with the drums. I'm like, absolutely. But it's, I'm not like that every day of the week, all year round. I would love it. Then I could turn things down. But I'll do a record and then I've got a little time to breathe. And then my job is to find the next gig. So I'm constantly looking for new artists or new projects to work on.
Sure.
It's all kind of like, relationship equity. It's like having friends or, just knowing the right people. It's like, hey, I'm available. I just finished this thing. If you got something going on, hey, hey, thanks for reaching out, Fig. I could totally use you on this. But, I listen to, I'm constantly looking for new music that gets me excited. It's like, I had an old high school friend. Hey, I just, bumped into this guy at this thing and he's got a band and we were talking and all of a sudden your name came up and he totally knows who you are. Is like, is it cool if I put you guys together and, maybe you guys can work? And I'm like, absolutely, sure. Why not? And I was so pleasantly surprised to hear this music. And it was so fresh and fun. And it was, it was kind of a retro-y throwback, but it was happening now. And this guy was like, he was doing it. Like he was like really 100% into what he was doing with his music and his direction. And I'm like, absolutely, I'll work on this record. And I did. And it turned out great. And it's Billy Rubin and the Elevated Enzymes. I don't know if you caught that on my Instagram, but
I think I did,
super,
actually.
Yeah, they're super fun.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So when you said 9:30 to 2:30, you're talking about AM to PM, right? Like during the day,
Yes.
banker.
Yeah.
So like,
9
is it a
a.m.
whole being up all night? Does that still exist doing this kind of stuff?
Sometimes, I mean, it's like when the budgets are small and you've got to get it done in 2 weeks. Hey, if you can stay awake, great.
Yeah.
And get it. But, hey, I just got all these things on my checklist done today and I'm ready to hit that next checklist off tomorrow. So, it's just all about budgeting your time and being efficient,
Sure.
I have friends that are like, hey, let's go get drinks. I'm like, all right, well, I'm mixing. Well, when are you done? What do you mean, when am I done? I'm like, hey, why don't I give you a call when I actually wrap this whole thing up? Because I can't just step away and have drinks because alcohol is going to affect my ears first and my perspective. So I don't do that to my clients. I want to give them all of my attention and be there for me. It's like, I want to make the right decisions the whole way down.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
You're based in LA. You mentioned, some travel. Do you still do that quite often, or home base mostly in LA and in the surrounding area? Or are you still all over the place?
Yeah, no, now I have a studio. So I'm either there or I'm working at other studios around town. Mm-hmm. So my studio gets booked and I'm not there. So, my partner's either in there or there's, we will rent the room to outside clients. I had Jay Rustin in and he brought that band Joyous Wolf and they were a total, blast. And Jay's a great guy. Now I'm mostly here, but, I did have to go to Seattle for the Alice in Chains record, that's always fun, but mostly lately it's been just sticking around town.
The last record for Alice was in Seattle.
Yeah.
The Rainier Fog. And they did part of that at Nick's place in Nashville too, right?
Yep. So we tracked all the music. We got most of the vocals done. And then, then we broke down, we budgeted out the studio to a certain time and we got to the end. We still had things to do. So Nick had his own space in Nashville, so it's sitting empty while we're, in Seattle.
Right.
So, he got to bring those guys over and they got to check out his groovy spot and, they finished the record up. And then, of course that time ran out. He had to start another band. And, I ended up finishing I think it was 3 or 4, maybe 5 songs of Jerry's vocals at his house.
So he has a music room in his house then. So is it attached to the house or is it out in the back?
Yeah,
or
no,
something,
it's one of his rooms and it's, it's treated and he has a Pro Tools setup in there. But I had to bring my Pro Tools setup, which is an actual HDX rig and an Avid IO, these newer converters. I also had to have a special clock system. I'm not going to name the name brand because I'm not getting paid for that. And, special microphones, special mic pre. And, and we did it because that was the same chain as what Nick was using at his studio.
Oh, sure. I see.
Keep it together.
That was the question I was going to ask. When you go to multiple studios to do the same record, is there a lot of variation in the sound in these studios? Back
in the day when you're using tape machines, that's why you would print tones to make sure you were hearing what you were hearing at the last place. And each room is different. If you do a frequency sweep of the room you're in and then go to another studio, they're going to be different, but they're going to be similar. But each you go to rooms you kind of know already and know where. Hey, if I lean back too far, the low end is going to be deceivingly big. But I know if I lean forward, it's kind of where it needs to be, and not too. Hey, if I lean back, I'm going to turn it down because I think it's too loud. But if I go forward, just little things like that. You just got to know the room. That comes with experience.
So then it kind of almost comes down to the equipment. Then, like you said, you had to bring a bunch of equipment up to Jerry's room.
Well, so Jerry, that was, so that's just tracking a vocal. So yeah, he was tracking in his living room, and I had a cable run going up to his music room to where I can listen in front of speakers. But yeah, I had to, we had to hang blankets and baffles because it's a very echoey hardwood floors, plaster walls, that type of thing. So we had to reel that in. It had to be usable. I couldn't have him just, it sound like he was in an echo chamber and all right, I'm done.
Well done.
Nailed it.
So with Brighton, then you got to work with Tyler Bates and Jerry, right? I mean, Tyler, Gil, Greg, they're all, phenomenal musicians. That must have been kind of an awesome opportunity to work with all those guys in one album.
Oh yeah. So that was all great, but it was mostly Jerry and me.
Sure.
It was just Jerry and me sitting in that room, getting it down, listening to the track. All right, is that guitar thing tight enough? Is this thing happening? Oh no, we need that third guitar to happen. This is the sound that has to happen right through here. And, I need feedback. So I'm like cranking, like speakers, just cranking them. And he's feeding back in the room. And, because we didn't have mic cabinets in there. We're using a special situation. And,
You're just making it work at that point.
Yeah, we're making it work. So, we had a setup to where we could overdub some guitars, and, if we needed feedback or extra wah stuff, or he's going to bust out the talk box, we can do it.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Ta-da.
Just listening to what it goes into, because you just think you hit record and you just record. I don't necessarily think that, but, but really to talk about the art form, the trade that you have and put these records together, it's just amazing, Paul. I mean, it's very enlightening to come to the realization of what comes into this and how, like you just said, how you make stuff work for these artists.
It's like, hey, let's go on a picnic. Great. Where are we going? What are we going to eat? Who's going to bring plates? Who's going to bring a blanket?
Right.
Is there going to be silverware?
Right. A lot of follow-up questions.
It sounds easy.
Just for people to steal it off the internet too. Goddamn thieves.
I do think I speak for the rest of us when I say thank you for your service. I mean, your work has just enhanced our lives so much, and we owe a lot to your work and what you've done. So thank you.
Can so much for having me.
For our tens of thousands of Chusky listeners and fans out there, how can they find you if they want to keep up with everything Paul Fig?
They can go to my website, paulfigmusic.com, or they can hit me up on Instagram. There is a Paul Fig Music Instagram, and I post, sometimes I post about my cooking and my running, which I love because that helps keep my head on straight. And, I don't know if you notice, when you engineer, you're just sitting there all day. So you got to move around. I like
when you run to those big old those side chops, those mutton chops you have. Do they blow in the wind?
Yeah. They blow the wind off of my earbuds.
We've had two guests. I don't know if you know Dan Epstein or not. He's a fairly well-known journalist. He's awesome, like Revolver and all those guys. He's got chops just like you have, and he was on like 2 weeks ago. So it's like deja vu. I used to have some good ones, but they're pretty much gone now. No, I'm going bald.
They used to be black.
Yeah, nice.
It's a groovy look. We appreciate the groovy look.
The COVID effect, right?
Yeah.
It's like, now it's great. It's like, holy hell, what we lived through.
Do you think? I mean, you can say officially you've made it, right? Like you've made it.
It's like, I just turned 53 and I'm still doing this. I guess I'm going to do this for my career.
It's not a job yet, but still growing up.
Paul, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate everything.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for your time too, man. I know you're busy as hell. So
all right, you guys
enjoy
take care.
that summer weather.
Thanks, brother.
I'm forced to. All right.
Yeah.
You guys take care.
Episode 22 in the books. Sketchy Goat,
man.
Chusky Dusty, Paul Fig. Wow. Just great. Just great.
It's amazing.
I don't know how we got that guy on, but dude needs a raise.
I can't go back to either you say yes to the podcast or there's a restraining order. And once again, you make sure you have a good lawyer when you have those court appearances next week.
Lawyer up.
Don't represent yourself, dude. I have doubts about that, dude. You could barely remember yesterday. You know what I mean?
Yesterday.
Yeah.
Thanks again to all of our Chusky Boy listeners, especially my homie Jesse Scheitler and Beth out there for supplying a couple good questions. We're going to get you out some Chusky merchandise. And man. It was awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Peace.